This fresh coat of the startup life has been sprayed on nice and smooth by Wagner and the Flexo series of paint sprayers. Startup Nation, my wife decided she wanted to rehab her childhood home. The goal was to fix it up and invite a nice family to rent it out. We knew one of the biggest jobs we had to undertake was painting. However, from the walls, the cabinets, and even the siding outside, it was going to be a big task. As entrepreneurs with a company to run, we knew this was going to take up a lot of our time, which is why we decided to get a paint sprayer. And after much research, we decided to go with the sprayer from the Flexio series from Wagner. Startup Nation, these sprayers are top-notch because of its flexibility to paint or stain walls, furniture, cabinets, and more. It's 10 times faster than using a paintbrush, which was a big selling point for us. And you can paint or stain right from the can. It's also easy to clean in 5 minutes, and being great for indoor and outdoor projects, a paint sprayer from the Flexio series clearly needs to be part of the arsenal in your garage. So if you're ready to stain your deck, or like me, fill your daughter's request of a bubblegum pink room, up your game with a paint sprayer from the Flexio series by Wagner. Take it from me, your time will thank you.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation, so I hope you're ready to receive some value today. My name is Dominic Lawson, and this is the Startup Life, the show for entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals. You know, Startup Nation, we always have many great guests. And, you know, one of my favorite type of entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs, right? They just love, you know, solving problems and scaling companies. And we have another great one today. His name is Paul Dashevsky, and he's a partner at GreatBuildz. What's going on, Paul?
Hey, Dominic. Nice to be with you.
Oh, I can't complain, brother. Can't complain. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Hey, you know, if you would, just kind of give us an origin story, quick background on who Paul is and what you're all about, my man.
Yeah, sounds good. So about 20 years ago, I did my education. I got a master's in real estate development because I knew I wanted to go and do real estate and do work in that space. So I actually worked for a few companies, few real estate developers for about 9 years. And then I went out on my own, started a little sort of family private equity fund where we invested in other people's real estate deals. And that was fun for a bit.
Gotcha.
Then went on and started a flipping company. I found a partner and we spent about 10 years flipping homes. We did about 350 flips here in Southern California. So that was sort of my second act. Yeah. Right. And then I stopped doing that a few years ago and I started this company called GreatBuildz because I found it was a little challenging for people to find good contractors. So GreatBuildz is a service here locally in Southern California that matches homeowners that want to renovate with pre-screened, pre-vetted general contractors. And that's me in a nutshell.
Absolutely. And if you want to check out GreatBuildz and you're looking there in the Southern California area and you're looking for a great contractor, make sure you check out GreatBuildz. GreatBuildz.com. We have that link there in the show notes for easy access if you're listening to the replay on the podcast. You know, and you talked about this just now. Just kind of get into it. We're like, why? What is it about contractors that people have a hard time dealing with? Is it because there's so many out there that, you know, they're hard to come by? Is it because there's so many out there who maybe not be so on the up and up? Kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of the Wild West, Dominic.
Right.
You know, look, I'm sure you've had the same experience, but when I would talk to people about their experience with contractors, they would want to talk to me about one of two things. Either they would tell me about a remodel nightmare or issue they've had with a contractor in the past, so that was very common.
Right.
Or they would ask me, "Hey, I really need a good contractor recommendation. I'm looking for somebody good." And it got me thinking a couple of years ago, why is this so hard? What makes it so hard? You know, it's not that hard to buy a laptop or a pair of shoes or buy a car, but it's hard to find a good contractor. And when I did a little bit of homework, I stumbled on something that I thought was kind of interesting that most people aren't aware of. I found that there was a survey done a few years back, and they interviewed people after they remodeled and surveyed them on their experience. And over 50% of homeowners that remodeled said they had a bad experience, a negative experience with their contractor or their remodel. So
that's a lot.
I thought about, right, what other industry where you're 50% of the people are unhappy with the product, right?
Marriage, but no, man, that's a whole nother joke. I'm sorry.
Marriage is a good one. I usually say politics because
fair enough.
50
fair
politics,
enough.
marriage, but this is ridiculous.
Absolutely, that's absurd.
I thought you got a 50-50 chance of having a good experience and a 50-50 chance of being miserable, right? Because when you hire a bad contractor, they will literally make you miserable. You can't get a hold of them. They never show up. They're delayed. They cost you more money.
Right.
So I thought, how do we fix this? And that's where we created this company, GreatBuildz, where we go out, we really vet contractors to narrow the field down to the, let's say, the 50% that are good, because we check and we call references and we go through this whole 10-step vetting process, and then we can recommend those contractors, the quote unquote good guys, to clients who need somebody good.
For sure. No, I appreciate you sharing all that, and if you would just kind of go into, how, more and more how GreatBuildz kind of vet those contractors, what that process looks like. Cause I know we have a lot of, listeners who are in the contracting game. And so they may want to, kind of up their game and kind of partner with GreatBuildz if they're there in the Southern California area, but also just kind of talk about how GreatBuildz works all in a nutshell.
Yeah. So the process, the way we've created it is that a client who needs a contractor, and really the only good way I think to find a contractor is to ask a friend, a neighbor who they've had a good experience with, because after that, option 2 really isn't great, which is sifting through review sites or sifting through your junk mail, and everyone has pretty pictures and 5 stars. That doesn't really tell you anything. So we thought there was sort of a better way. And so what we do is we go through this 10-step vetting process. I mean, in a nutshell, it's management interview, calling references, checking work experience, running a background check, checking online ratings, checking the contractor state license board, insurance, and making them sign a code of conduct. So it's like this sort of comprehensive a process, so that the ones that come through the bottom of the funnel and we give a check mark to, there's a better chance than 50-50 that those are really the solid guys. And so look, what do people want out of a contractor? They want them to treat the house as if with respect, as if it was their own. They want to be treated with respect. They're paying tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they want people to show up. They want to be communicated with. It's not that difficult, but contractors have a tough situation. They have employees. Sometimes they don't show up. Sometimes trucks break down. Sometimes materials, are delayed. So they have a tough time at it. But the ones that people like are the ones that will just be honest and upfront, and will call and will over communicate and will under promise and over deliver. It's just like anything else in life, and that's it. And so the thing I didn't mention about GreatBuildz is, other than sort of marrying a person who needs a contractor with a great contractor, is we then stay involved. My staff stays involved throughout the renovation process, because some miscommunication will come up.
Absolutely.
So we want that. So we want that client to be able to call and say, hey, I know Joe's great, the contractor, but I haven't heard from him in a few days. What's up? We'll get a hold of him. We'll figure that out. We'll sort of be that support network for the client when and if there's an issue at all.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask one quick follow-up question before we move on. But so let's say, you're talking, Joe the contractor, he's hired and stuff like that. And you have one of those situations where the person hasn't heard from him in days and stuff like that, and then you come to find out, like, okay, Joe the contractor ended up not being who he says he was. He didn't really complete the job on time. He's taking time and this, that, and the other. I guess what's that process after the fact? If you kind of feel like, well, maybe he's not a good fit for GreatBuildz and for this project and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a one strike policy with us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, because think about it. If that contractor did not do a good job for Mrs. Jones, and let's say Mrs. Jones is a reasonable person and explained to us, look, I really tried. She wasn't kind of out there in space and expected crazy things. But if the client is a reasonable person and the contractor just did not come through and whatever, did poor work, delays, extra cost, whatever the issue was,
right,
they're gone. They're frankly, they're gone. There's other better contractors that we could find. But hopefully we'll never get to that, because
of course,
in advance, we want to call, we want to call their references and make sure they do good work for other people. Because usually when you do good work for 3, 5, 10 clients, that tells you something, that's a contractor that cares about their client, cares about their work, so on and so forth. But what we would do if there's an issue is we would help Mrs. Jones or whoever the client solve it, whether they have to fire the contractor, find a new one, whether we have to get involved to make sure the contractor finishes the job. We'll do what we can do to help them solve it. And frankly, these contractors generally will follow our lead. And I say that because we give them lead after lead after lead, Dominic. So we're kind of important to them. So if we kind of say jump to a certain degree, they'll say how high, because they want that next lead and that next lead and that next lead.
Absolutely. And if you're not doing the work, you're not doing the work well, you only have those leads. And a contractor's means of making an income is definitely, that constant pipeline, if you will. Yep. I would imagine. So now I appreciate you sharing that. Once again, Startup Nation, we're talking to Paul Dashevsky, the co-founder of GreatBuildz. Once again, we have that link, greatbuildz.com. We have that link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to the replay on the podcast. I want to ask you this about kind of just real estate as a whole, because, I can't I've lost count, Paul, how many mailers and phone calls and stuff like that. Hey, you want to buy it? You want to sell your house? 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 And so I guess kind of explain what's going on in the real estate game right now these days, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I wish I had a really good answer, but I don't really know. From my perspective, right now with COVID, I expected things to just shut off, but that's not what happened, right? We all see this. Real estate prices continue to go up, people continue to move, and interestingly, people continue to renovate, and that shocked me. But from everything I've read, Dominic, it seems to be people are at home and they're antsy and they're bored and they want to do something that feels like they're in control of their lives, understandably, because we're not. Right. So I could tell you, I've had countless friends that have moved. This was their impetus to get up and move and change their lives and do what they, wanted to do for years, or they decide to renovate, even though they've been putting that off because that's something they can control in their home anyways. So I think the answer is that there's just a lot of demand because people are buying. Interest rates help, really low interest rates help. Absolutely. There's a lot of demand, right? And maybe not quite as much supply because, those of us that aren't selling our homes, that aren't moving, aren't exactly keen on getting our house ready and showing people through and the masks and the this and the that. So I'd say supply is low, demand is high, prices keep going up, and and real estate agents are staying busy and they want you to sell your house.
Gotcha. And I imagine that's definitely, kind of explain the market there in Southern California. I imagine that's always a hot market, correct?
It's been hot for a long time. There was the last recession in 2008.
Of course.
Things, we had a big run up, right? So I think in places like Southern California, where you have a big run up, you also have a big decline. So for example, here, when I started flipping in 2009, which was kind of when the sky was falling in the last recession, it was, prices fell over the next 3 years or so by about 40, in some places 50, even some places 60% from their peak. So yes, things are hot in California, but in Southern California, but they're hot when they're hot. And when the, hits the fan, there could be a big drop. So, right.
Right, for sure, for sure. And speaking of people kind of taking control of their lives and stuff like that, a lot of people are kind of diving into the world of entrepreneurship, and many of those people that I see, and a lot of those people listen to our show. Many of those people are getting into the real estate game, flipping houses, wholesale buying, and stuff like that. What kind of advice would you give those people that want to kind of dive into that land of entrepreneurship when it comes to real estate?
Yeah, look, I love real estate, so I certainly understand why people would want to get into it. It's exciting. Obviously, you can make good money because asset values, real estate is the most expensive asset, I think, or one of them. So the possibilities are great. But if you're new, I'd say you have to really be cautious and really be willing to learn. And I'd say learn from someone that's been doing it for a while. So for example, if you want to become a real estate agent, partner up with somebody who's been doing it for a while. If you want to flip homes, partner up with someone that's been doing it. I could tell you from experience, and I had real estate experience when I started flipping, but my first few homes, maybe my first dozen, we made funny, ridiculous, silly mistakes that easily cost us lots of money. Why? Because we were the newest flippers. And I like to say, when you're the newest, you're the dumbest. I mean, not because you're dumb, just because you're new. You don't know what you don't know. So I love real estate, and I love when, people get into real estate as entrepreneurs and to start a business. But I would say it's not something you can just sort of pick up and experiment with. Really, you gotta listen to podcasts like this. You gotta read books. You gotta partner up. You gotta learn from somebody and get a mentor, and try to make mistakes on somebody else's dime for the first couple times, if you will. So that you don't lose money on it.
For sure.
All right, Startup Nation. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life. Tresta powers this episode of The Startup Life. Okay, Startup Nation, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Tresta. Tresta is an app for iPhone and Android that lets you do business calling and texting from anywhere. I know so many entrepreneurs that are still using their personal phone number for business calls. It can get complicated drawing the line between your personal and professional life. Startup Nation, this is the best business phone app out there. Whether you just need a business phone number or if your team is ready for a complete business phone system, Tresta is totally flexible and can grow with your business. And it's all unlimited. Calling, texting, and all of the powerful call management features like auto attendance, call recording, user groups, and more for just $15 per user per month. With Tresta, there's no contract, and you don't need any special hardware, just your smartphone you're already using. Tresta is easy to configure, so you can set everything up yourself, all online, avoiding all the hassle and high overhead costs of setting up a traditional business phone system, which is important because as entrepreneurs, we are always trying to cut cost and time. They're offering a 30-day free trial so you can see if Tresta's virtual phone system is right for you. Communicate smarter and more efficiently with Tresta. Start now at Tresta.com/startuplife. That's TRESTA.com/startuplife. The link is there in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast. Tresta, business communication simplified. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life.
Look, because you talked about it earlier. A lot of people are staying at home. A lot of people are binge watching like a lot of shows on HGTV and stuff like that. It's like, oh, I would love to do that. And they get into it. It's like, oh man, this is a lot, right? So I guess I'm curious, gotta tamper those expectations, if you will, Startup Nation. I was just kind of curious and fascinated to kind of ask you about that. I guess I'm curious about, what are you seeing about, like, what are those next, those things in real estate right now that you're excited about? Like I said, we talked about, market, rates are low and stuff like that. But what is Paul excited about real estate, or maybe the next phase of real estate moving forward?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I'm bad about crystal balls because I feel
Fair
like,
enough.
well, I mean, I feel like um, I'm wrong just as much as I'm right. That 50% sort of thing we were talking about. I'm definitely 50-50. But
Right.
um, look, I'm always looking for an interesting deal, with a story, right? So I met a gal not too long ago that also has been flipping homes for actually longer than me, 15 years, and she specializes in buying hoarder homes, right? Well, hoarder homes have a story. They are never going to sell at full price because the average person doesn't want to come into a home and buy a hoarder home, right? That's
Hmm.
just so it has to sell to an investor or somebody that's willing to, take that on. And so it's going to sell for a lower price. You have to deal with the hoarding, you have to deal with maybe pests. Anyways, so
Mm.
it has what we call a story. That story makes it so that it's a good deal. It's a compelling deal. If you're just buying the average house on market and thinking that you're going to renovate it and get top dollar, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Usually for folks like that, they don't make a lot of money doing that sort of thing. But if you're going into this thinking, well, maybe I'm going to buy trust sales, or maybe I'm going to look into the world of sales that come through because of divorce or whatever,
Right.
compelling stories, or I'm just going to get to know a real estate agent in the market and tell them I want to buy fixers or I want to buy this. It doesn't, and I don't want to say that makes it easy. It's still not easy, but at least now you're on the right path. If you're not
Right.
doing that, you're not even on the right path yet. So does that make sense?
No, that makes complete sense. That makes complete sense, and I appreciate you sharing that. And, I want to ask you this, trying to transition here a little bit because I know you're on the membership committee of Tech Coast Angels LA, the most prolific angel network in the United States. And if you want to check that out, Startup Nation, we have that link there in the show notes for easy access. I'm curious, because you talked about being in a private equity and stuff like that earlier. I'm curious, like when people come and ask for money, right? What are some of those mistakes that you often find when people are come asking for money when it comes, trying to seek an investor for a real estate deal or something like that? Kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So with angel investors or any investor that's seeking that's investing in newer companies, right? We're
Right.
talking about looking at companies that are reasonably new, that don't have a lot of traction. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for that kind of investment, you have to understand that that investor is knows that what you're offering them is a risky proposition, and
Mm-hmm.
that the likelihood of them investing their money in you and getting anything significant back is low. And so you're right. There's all these qualifications that they're looking for. So one example is what we call product market fit. Um, so if you come and you say, I have this great idea and I'm starting to, do this, I want to start a restaurant, or I want to start a wine brand, or whatever it is.
Right.
Um, that's great. But as an investor, you have to say, have you proven out product market fit? So that
Mm.
restaurant or whatever that business is, how can you prove to me that it's going to work in that location or what you're trying to sell? There's a lot of wines out there. There's a lot of restaurants out there. There's a lot of plumbers. There's always a lot of something. Or if it's an idea that's novel and nobody's ever heard of, again, how do you prove to me that it's going to work? So you have to sort of show me that you're already selling something, that you've interviewed people, you've whatever. And then the second thing fits into that, which is you're really, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, you're really investing in the entrepreneur. At an
Right.
early stage, the company is nothing. You're really investing in the entrepreneur. So, for example, if you, as an entrepreneur, want to do home health care, and you come with a deal to an investor, they want to know, okay, have you had experience doing this? Forget about having a business, but do you have experience in this field? And if the answer to that is no, but I want to try it out, that's great.
Right.
But what if that that entrepreneur said, yes, I've been doing this for 10 years for somebody else. I know the ins and outs, and I've been in this business, and I literally know it to the T. And this person is, this person I work for has great business, but I could see it growing another 50% if they just do this, this, and this, and this. And here's the research I did. Now, all of a sudden, as an investor, you feel a lot more confident. Like, yeah, this guy knows the business. He seems to have done a lot of homework to figure out how to then get that business cranking even better. That's the kind of thing as an investor you're looking for from an entrepreneur, is experience and insight and motivation and product market fit. And there's a bunch of others, but that's sort of a good start for you.
For sure. No, and I appreciate that, because, once again, that's one of the things that we've been hearing a lot, is that like investors, they're obviously product market fit, experience and stuff like that, but they're, ultimately at the end of the day, kind of investing in the entrepreneur. And something else that you said I thought was very interesting. It just makes so much sense, because there were days where you could just have an idea on a napkin and like maybe you can get some money for it. But now with so many things at your disposal from the internet and pay systems and stuff like that are very affordable now, not like they was maybe 10, 20 years ago. You kind of have to walk in the door with an investor with some type of proof of concept, some type of experience in that game, some skin in the game, for sure. So I appreciate you sharing all of that.
Yeah, right. So, look, even if you want to put an idea or whatever on crowdfunding or Kickstarter,
right, and
you raise a little bit of money or interest, that way you could show an investor, hey, look, clearly there's some interest there. Or you just, a mistake I think a lot of entrepreneurs make is they worry about the expenses first. I've heard some smart people say this. Let's open an office. Let's staff up. Let's get a copy machine. Let's, whatever, right? Spend money to. That's the wrong tact. All you need is a bedroom in your house and a laptop and a phone, right? And if you use your own money, use some family money to bootstrap and figure out, can you get customers? If you want to build a product, build a prototype. If you want to do a service, hustle and ask 100 of your friends who's willing to pay for this. You have to just really not even prove it out to investors, prove it out to yourself, right? When we started GreatBuildz, we pivoted a few times, and we pivoted because we thought something would work, and then we talked. My advice is talk to as many people as you can. Not everybody's advice is correct, but you will hear some things that will resonate with you. I remember early on, I had a conversation with a very smart guy, and he said, "Well, I know this is the business you want to do, but here's a suggestion for you to pivot this." And at first, I kind of thought, yeah, that's not really what I want to do. But what I realized, like over a couple weeks or a couple months, I slept on it, and that comment just kept coming like into my head again and again and again. And as we kept learning over those few months, we learned that, yes, he's right. That original business model, it's going to be hard to get revenue, and it's going to be hard to scale. But the business model he recommended, that does have legs. So by having that conversation, it really changed I'll say in quotes, but my life, right? My trajectory for the next few years, because I did decide to pivot based on his recommendation. So my advice is, like, you have an idea, you want to start a business. Number one, work on revenue and clients, and seeing if you can actually sell whatever it is that you want to sell.
Right.
And two, just literally talk to anyone that will talk to you, and ask them, does this make sense? What do you think? And it's not friends, right, Dominic? Friends and family will always tell you you're a genius, and yes, go and go for your goals. You want to talk to other people and really get honest feedback and ask them, should I start a restaurant in this location? And somebody might say, hey, the last 3 that opened, they're closed. That should be a clue to you, so. Anyways, you'll learn as you go, and I think that's valuable.
Right. Restaurants are hard, aren't they? It's like, razor thin margins and stuff like that. It's like food prices fluctuate. Restaurants are so hard.
I use restaurants as an example, but I tell you, I would never open a restaurant in my life
Right.
for the reasons you said. But I do have a friend who opens restaurants, and I like to say that he enjoys drama because he won't admit it, but he does, because think about the wait staff and the host, and there's always somebody not coming in, and there's just staffing problems and food problems and anyways. But he loves it, but I would never do it.
Well, right. Like you said, you must love drama, because like there's a lot of drama. I'm with you. I would never open a restaurant. Look, a lot of people who open them, they're really good at it, but they're also like, one thing I've noticed about people who are restaurateurs who are good at, they're extremely meticulous, and I think you have to be when you start a restaurant. So I appreciate it. And I guess have an appetite for drama, I guess. As well. Once again, Startup Nation, we're wrapping up with Paul Dashevsky, the founder of GreatBuildz. Once again, we could have that website there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to the replay on the podcast. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, Paul, but let's kind of dive into it just a little bit more as we're wrapping up right now. How has life been for you? And, during COVID, it was the COVID moment. Now we're kind of in the COVID era, if you will. So kind of talk about how you've been navigating this new normal, I guess.
Yeah, it's sort of amazing. Like I said, we really sort of shrunk a little bit with my company at the beginning of COVID, because I was concerned that no one was going to do anything. We were going to start a pretty deep recession, but that's not what ended up happening. So we ended up starting to grow a little bit. People were calling us for various kinds of renovations they wanted to do. As a matter of fact, we're really busy out here in California. They've passed some new laws with regards to being able to add something called an ADU, which stands for accessory dwelling unit, which is essentially being able to put a small unit in your backyard. So now that you can do that throughout the state, we're getting tons of calls from people saying, yeah, I want to build a unit in my backyard for family, or for my retired parents, or for myself, or for a rental unit, or for a work from home office, right? There's just so many options. So whereas that opportunity didn't exist recently, now it's a big thing. So I'm optimistic that things will keep moving in the right direction. And, the statistics are interesting. I think they say 25% of all homeowners say they plan some kind of renovation in the next year or two. So there's always something going on. People are always trying to improve their space one way or the other, and we just want to make sure we're helpful to those people and ensure that they don't have that they have a bad experience and not a negative experience, because those negative experiences can be ultra stressful.
Absolutely. I definitely understand that. Hey, Paul, let me ask you this, man. Who are some people you just kind of look up to and admire? Whether it be, business leaders or just in general, who are those people you look up to? And why?
Oh, man.
Obviously.
There's a gent called Peter Diamandis. He's an author, he's a podcast host, and he's a futurist. And I would say he's incredibly interesting and influential, keeps his finger on the pulse of what's happening and the future and entrepreneurship. But I'd say more than anything else, he is like an eternal optimist. He's the guy that started the X Prize, if anyone's familiar with that. But he's such an optimist. He, when you listen to his podcast or read his books, you just get a sense that the world's moving in the right direction. And he's funny. When he talks about like turning off the news, don't listen to the news because it's always negative. And he calls CNN the crisis news network, because that's, essentially what it is. Gotcha. And so it makes you really think about, like, if you listen to him and if you follow him, you feel better about the direction the world's heading, and you learn a lot about future tech and future entrepreneurship. So he's great. Peter Diamandis.
I hear that. I hear that. Appreciate that that recommendation for sure. And before I ask the last question, I just want to say, Paul, thank you so much for coming on the show, giving some very valuable insight into real estate and also your company. Once again, that company, Startup Nation, is GreatBuildz, GreatBuildz.com. We have that link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to the replay on the podcast. And I guess, Paul, Paul, if you would, we'll give you the opportunity to kind of be like the person you just mentioned, just kind of give us some words to kind of, take us out for today. Just some words of encouragement, if you don't mind, good sir.
Yeah, I would say that, especially for young entrepreneurs or folks that want to be entrepreneurs, there are so many wonderful resources out there to educate and inspire you, right? I mean, you have a terrific podcast, and there's a lot of other terrific podcasts about startups and entrepreneurship, and you can learn from these folks that you would otherwise not have access to, right? I wouldn't have access to Peter Diamandis if it wasn't for books and podcasts and websites and all the resources we have now. So right. I would say for folks thinking about doing this, like, just get involved in all the various options there are there. Learn, read, take all this stuff in. Like I said, maybe find a mentor and get inspired, because there's just so many ways to do that now.
I hear that. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. And that's going to wrap up this session of the Startup Life. Once again, I want to thank Paul Dashevsky for coming on the show. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks, Dominic.
No worries. And as always, Startup Nation, if you have an idea, be about that life, the Startup Life.
If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show, as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new startup blog, where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life, the Startup Life.